Hello everyone. So for today's video we are going to do something quite simple. Start out with the basics. So I get this request, well, not request but question, very often over on my Instagram on how I specifically layer graphite for instance first. So I thought we'd start out with the basics on how I layer graphite, the way I go about it, maybe different little simple techniques and tricks, and also just a quick rundown of what I actually do use for my graphite pencil portraits. So it's quite simple. So I have actually got a full range of graphite pencils, all the way from a 7H all the way up to a 9B. I don't think, if you are starting out, I don't think it's necessary to have a full range, but once you actually get into it, it's quite nice to have the big variants, because it's sometimes very difficult for me sometimes to explain why I would rather use maybe a 4B than a 6B, or rather go for the 8B than the 9B, or you know, all that fun stuff. So yeah, let's just start out with the pencils in my arsenal. So I've got both the Faber-Castell, this is the 9000, yeah, 9000 graphite pencils, and I've got all the way, I think, a 2H to a 9B in them, so the 12-piece tins. I've only recently started using them, and I'm quite enjoying ability to layer, and their depth and range is very nice. But I have been using Cretacolor's fine art graphite pencils for years now, and they are still a very firm favorite. They are not as expensive as the Faber-Castell, especially here in South Africa. I don't know so much overseas, but here in South Africa the Cretacolor is still up there in price, but not as expensive. Has also got the full range from 7H to, I think the highest in this one I've got is 8B. They also layer very, very nicely. They have nice depth and range, and the leads don't break as easily. And then I also have a very handy dandy graphite powder. This is also Cretacolor's graphite powder. This is quite a big tin. I bought this years ago, and it's still going strong. I still got plenty of it left. It's definitely one of the most useful tools that I have added to my arsenal for portraiture. This is my key to layering graphite and everything, but we'll get to it. And then obviously for the powders, and also just in general, I have the paper stumps. They're all very dirty. None of mine are clean, but I like them. This one especially, very, very dirty. I don't always have to put powder on it, just to blend all my pencils out. And then also a very soft bristle brush. This is an old makeup brush that I didn't use anymore, and it works. So any soft bristle brush, doesn't have to be expensive, the cheapest one you can find that has nice bristles and that can layer. And then also a putty eraser, very useful for picking up. I find this more useful when you've got softer layers, beginning layers. Once it starts to get heavy, when you've got quite a few layers going on, you do need to apply a bit more pressure, but it still does the job, just won't erase as much as you'd like. But I like to, maybe for instance, if I'm doing larger pieces, I do grid, then I'll just roll it over to soften out the grid marks. And then also something new to my collection is the Tombow Mono Eraser. This is a 2.3mm round tip. Very, 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 very useful for the finer details. This is my best friend in terms of fur details especially, and finer details, highlights and everything. And then yeah, that's about it for my materials that I use. And obviously all my portraits are done on the, let me just flip this bad way around, the Fabriano drawing paper. So this is 160 GM. It's very nice. It's got a good grain to it. It's not, obviously when you're doing colored pencils, a deeper grain is nice. It's not as textures as the watercolor papers, but it's got a nice grain to it. It really takes pencil layers very, very, very nicely. I don't have a problem with layering on it. It can really take a beating, and it's just really easy to use. So let's do a little, so I'm just, there's no rhyme or reason, there's no reference, there's no form that we're going to do. We're just going to talk about how I layer, just for my basics, and then maybe how I layer up for deeper things, and maybe just take how I put the powder on the paper stumps to do some maybe like outlining or all that stuff. So I normally take on my brush, I really tap off the excess in the beginning. You can even, I'll show you what it looks like when you don't tap off the excess. And I just circular motions. That's about how I layer. And then obviously I work in sections, well I try to work in sections. And then you just kind of fill the whole area with your powder. And it just gives, I prefer to work off of a slight grey tone when I start out. It's just, I don't know, working straight on the white paper, it doesn't really work in my mind. So I always put in a very small layer of graphite powder. It does, I don't think it's as messy as charcoal powder. I haven't used charcoal powder, but it erases very easily. It gets everywhere, but it's very nice. So how it looks if you don't actually tap off the excess, then it's a lot messier, but it gives a darker tone to it. It's a little deeper, and you've got a lot more to play with. Obviously it depends on how much you take, but it really is also very nicely when I go maybe in the end put in a few details. I'll take this, tap off all the excess, or maybe just take the brush as is. There will be some powder residues left on it, and I'll just take this over the portrait and kind of just soften out everything. I always explain it, oil painters, or really any type, I think it's more oils, my painting knowledge is a bit hit or miss. They put over a glaze, and I kind of describe it in that way. So I'm just going to take a cleaner paper stump, same as a brush, tap off all the excess, and then it will basically do the same thing. It's just, I prefer this method for smaller areas, to be a bit more precise. Then it's a lot easier than, for instance, this covers big areas very nicely. And then yeah, super simple. Now if I take it maybe and not tap off, maybe just slightly a bit of the excess, also the same, a lot deeper and darker. This won't give you more depth. Let's see. So it won't really go darker than this. You really have to use more your pencil for the really deeper dark tones, but this really aids in getting, if you were going in with shadows, then you don't use just pure pencils for this type of thing. But yeah, this graphite powder makes it very simple, and as you can see, this is now nice, and just see how much it can take and how far it can take you. It really very useful, and it just gives a soft look to everything, and then you can just use your brush and diffuse all the edges. Very simple and easy. This is how I do my initial layers. I will do follow-up videos where we do more forms and shapes, but yeah, this is how I do my initial layers, map out everything, give myself a quick head start to a portrait, and it just makes it flow a lot easier. So if I'm now gonna, let's just say, let's work on this top little section where it's not that deep and dark. So I normally start out with the 2H. This is normally where I begin, on top of a graphite powder layer, and it's soft strokes. I have a quite far away grip from the point. The closer obviously you are, the more precise and more pressure you're going to put on in general, but I prefer to move farther away, and the 2H just gives it slightly deeper than this. Even on top of this you will be able to see it, but not as much. And then I'll just maybe take a 2B over top of that. Sometimes you have to be wary, especially with your H ranges. They can make indents in papers. And then just in circular motions, you will see also the residue on the brush also helps diffuse it. You lose the depth obviously when you blend out your pencils, but that just gives you the very nice layering effect. And then you can go back over top with your 2H. Depending on what you're doing, and drawing will depend on which way you're gonna angle, which strokes you're gonna make, or you're gonna. So for instance, for my fur, this is how I start out. I don't draw in the details, I don't draw in the shapes. I just give myself a basic 2B again, a basic little start, a foundation, so to speak. So when you start taking away the pencil for maybe fur details, let's take the putty eraser for instance, there will be something underneath. It won't be pure white pencil that will come through. It will have a slight tint to it. I mean, much easier. And then also when I do this graphite powder layers, I'll sometimes take the mono eraser and also do out shapes. See, simple. That's why I like using the graphite powder. If you do make mistakes in the initial layers, it's very simple to fix, remedy, take away, because I only want to start adding detail when we really get to that stage when I'm happy with my foundation, happy with all of this. So let's take for instance, say you don't have the powders, say you do not have powders, then I will take my 2H. You can still have blending stumps. I'll see and find one that I didn't put powder on just now. So I'll take my 2H, very soft pressure. You don't want to put too much pressure. You will get a deeper value, but I prefer going in layers softer initially. Still a dirty one, but they will pick up residue from your pencil when you blend them out. So this is a soft layer, this is a hard layer. Adding a bit more pressure to get this out. As you can see with the harder pencil, I have to work a little bit harder to get the lines out, to diffuse it, and then I will end up with something darker than I would maybe want to start out with. So I like using softer pressure, and obviously then you don't have to work as hard or press as hard to blend out your powder. So I'm going to take the 2B again, and we're just going to layer over top, same principle, soft pressure, and here I'm going to use hard pressure. It still layers very nicely, but as you can see here now, I've got indents in my paper from where the 2B, the 2H was put down. So it's very slight, but it is noticeable. I prefer not to have that. So I'll take my stump again, and there you'll be able to see it more visible when I blend it out. I'll have those little indents. That's why I start with soft pressure. There is people that use the indent method for fur details or maybe skin texture. I prefer not to use it. It's not my technique. I prefer the layering. And then I'm gonna jump straight in. Jump straight in with a deeper pencil, 8B. This is 8B from Faber-Castell. Softer pressure, circular motions, and here I'm going to do the exact same as earlier, harder pressure. You will still see the grain coming through from the paper, and I'll show you now how I combat that. That is if you go straight from your H to your B range, and then you take our blending stump again, blend it out. Can still see the grain in this, not to worry. I do this between all my layers, blending out. Take this one, apply a bit more pressure to really blend out my edges. See, I have to work hard for this. I don't like working hard. You can still see there's like a halo. And I really can't blend out this 8B even more. And I have to use a pencil to get it there. So let's see. 8B. So harder pressure doesn't always work in your favor right away. You need to work smarter. There, I get it right. That wasn't as hard as the first layer. So how to get the grain out? Well, I like using my H pencils over top of my B pencils. Soft pressure. You will still see a slight grain, but the values just deepen up even more. So if I add even more, let's add more 8B. Hard pressure. Softer pressure. This I went just up and down, up and down, up and down. Here I use circular motions. I'll get the exact same tones and values, but this one will just leave you with a bit more problems to work with. And I still there's just these little edges that I don't like. It all needs to blend seamlessly from one to another, and it's just not happening. I'll switch sides and blend this one out. Just see how seamless that is. An exact same process, but it just looks more blended, not as problematic. Now, you can also, that's when I work from H range to B range. Now you can also go from B range. Say this is now my 2B pencil. Soft pressure, circular motions, and I use the flat side of the pencil. I don't use the tip. That just also ensures that you don't put too much pressure on, because I don't want for my initial layers to be too defined. I like it to be soft. So I'm going to blend out one side and not the other side. So I'm going to take my 2H over top. The grain is also already slightly diffused. Circular motions. Can also do this to blend out, kind of blend out your B pencils or fill in the grain in between. You want these layers to build up nice and softly so that you have a good base and foundation to work with on your, when you get to your more finer details. See, I get the exact same result if I blend it, even if I blend it first and then put the 2H over top, or put the 2H over top and then blended it. And it all will still diffuse very nicely. So I put the pencil down and then I blend around the pencil as well, and this will give myself a nice diffused edge. And also with blending stump, using the flat edge allows you to blend out even more. So I can do exact same thing 8B as I did there. Can even take a bit of 2H over top. This is all softer pressure still. It just fills in the gaps in between your 8B. Makes it look like you use your 8B all over, but you actually didn't. Take it a bit more outside the edge. Take my blending stump again. Circular motions all around. And with this layering process, your stump will pick up the pencil and it will just help blend it out even more. That's why I don't buy new clean ones. I just continue on using the dirty ones. Just makes it a lot easier. Now if I was to take a brush, this I didn't put anything on the brush. Doesn't seem like it does much, but this is diffuse it even slightly. So we're going to take a bit on the brush. And obviously you lose the depth of the 8B, and that's where the layering process comes in. You can obviously instantly go in, say I take the 8B now. I can go in with a deeper pressure, and you will feel the layers underneath the pencil. And as you can see, it layers a lot better than it did with this one. It layers a lot better. It feels smoother, and already the grain of the paper is not there. You've already lost the grain. And it goes deeper. Obviously the shine of the pencil doesn't help, but yeah, that's the way I like to layer it. So you can go from B pencil to H with layering over top, and you'll get similar results. But the key is into softer pressure, using your paper stumps, using your blending tools for just that initial process. Yeah, that's the basic gist of layering. This is a very fun ensemble. But yeah, so that's kind of my basic rules of thumb for layering my graphite pencils. These bad boys and this thing and this is obviously my saving grace when it comes to graphite pencil layering. Once we get into more detail work, you will see exactly how useful this can become. Obviously, if you want instant more detail work, in-depth things, I do have a Patreon where we go really in-depth. My YouTube channel will be more for kind of quick little tips, quick little hints, maybe some snippets and time-lapse, obviously. Quick rundowns, I don't think, yeah. But you can head over to my Patreon for more in-depth. But these things is essential. It's probably why I work a little bit quicker sometimes in my initial stages. My detail work takes the longest, but this is essential in my kits. I have absolutely no idea how I drew anything before I came across these little things. And obviously erasing for detail work, so the little mono eraser also became very essential to my portraiture. But yeah, I think once you get down a good foundation in your portrait work, you've mapped out all your areas of depth and lights and contours and all of that. I think once you get your foundation set, your detail work will come off a lot better and a lot easier. You won't struggle through it. Obviously, there will be certain areas you struggle with. Like some portraits are just more difficult than others. They maybe have an element that you haven't worked on for very long before. But yeah, I think foundation and just to get your layers down, I think it's very important to have good layers down. I see a lot in newer artists where they don't have very established values, contrast between the deeps and the lights. That's also very important, but I think just getting that foundation down of not seeing the whites of the paper when you erase, it will just add more depth to your portrait work. If you really want that white highlights, you can obviously use other mediums, like for instance white paint, or what I use is a Sakura jelly roll. Very simple, very easy, but that's like right at the end. But anyways, if you like this, like and subscribe. Maybe comment down some other tips you would like to see from me on this channel. I will put the link in the description bar below for my Patreon, as well as all my other social medias. And yeah, I hope you enjoy and have a good day.